this interview will be written in Chinese report, I mean, articles.
No, I'm not worried. No,
They might
no.
read it and wow.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll read it.
你怎么跟反党组织？
Much more. No, no. I'm not afraid at all. I mean, I don't care. Whatever. Yeah, I think that if they have killed or arrested people in Cambodia, like that's happened. There's a few countries that'll let that happen, and some won't. So, U.S. of course won't allow that. I don't know that it's ever happened. So,
but also that what you experience, it maybe in China, this kind of censorship or maybe where the kind of atmosphere you felt at the time was probably the reason why the Western companies maybe is having a harder and harder time doing business in China.
right.
What's that all about?
Well, even before the pandemic, even before I left, when I was having trouble getting visas for my employees, it means all companies were having trouble getting visas for employees. It was becoming very hard to have foreign employees or experts or managers in China. When the pandemic happened, some companies ordered their people out. Some companies, that's a policy. If there's any kind of crisis, they'll get most of the employees out. So managers, employees, a lot of them left either voluntarily or the company told them to leave. They couldn't bring them back. It's been very difficult to bring these people back. So the number of Americans working in China now is just a fraction of what it was, in 2019. And in 2019, it was already lower than it was earlier.
And recently, they passed this 反间谍法,
Yeah.
and also targeting foreign companies.
Yes.
More and more.
Yes.
How do you interpret this mean?
So the two of these laws, the counterintelligence law and then the foreign policy law, which make asking about sensitive topics is now illegal. Everything's a sensitive topic, right? And think about this: what percentage of companies in China are government invested, right? So you may not even know that it's really a state-owned enterprise as such, right? It could be a shoe factory, but it is government invested. They could consider you asking anything about that company that could be prying into sensitive secrets or state secrets or something like that. Normal things, due diligence, auditing, market surveys, any of these things could now put you afoul of the law and you could be arrested as a spy. How in the world can foreign companies operate in China? So now you've got difficulty getting the visas. Plus, with the popularity of China declining tremendously, very few people want to work in China. That's the other thing. Good luck finding an employee that wants to work in China and then try and get a visa for that employee and then put them there and then just know that in the course of his normal business activities, he might get arrested.
Well, why do you think they do that?
Why do I think they do that? I think that the CCP is just tightening up social controls. It's tightening. When I first came to China the second time, when I came back in 2012 and I started teaching at Shanghai University, and then when I went to the sports university and economics university, when I came back in 2012, somewhere around that time is China's peak. 2010 is when the GDP numbers were no longer, it was the last year, I believe, that it was double-digit GDP growth. So the GDP growth started slowing at that point. Somewhere between 2010 and 2014 was about the peak of China's soft power. So when I first got to China, they were throwing scholarships around. They were bringing students from overseas. There were millions of students in China. Companies, they changed the law that you could have a wholly owned foreign entity for the first time. Foreigners can own their own company in China. Like all these things, it was opening, and it went through about 2014. And before I even graduated the sports university, and before Donald Trump was even in office, it began to change. And Xi Jinping was tightening. And when Donald Trump came in, they tightened a lot, but they were able to blame a lot of it on Trump. Trump's gone now. It's tightening.
What is the impact of that tightening on China's economy?
Well, it's scaring away FDI. So people look at this foreign direct investment and they don't understand that when you do foreign direct investment, you're investing in real companies in China, a factory, store, whatever it is, hotel, casino. You're investing in a real company. So those dollars go directly into the economy, creating jobs, construction, but then people are going to work in that hotel, creating jobs for them. So this has a tremendous benefit for the Chinese people or for any country that receives FDI, foreign direct investment. The other thing is that China steals our intellectual property. According to the United States Trade Representative, China steals between $250 to $600 billion per year in intellectual property. A lot of this is being stolen through joint ventures. Sometimes a joint venture contract demands that all technology, all American technology, be shared with joint venture partner in China. So this FDI, these joint ventures are bringing money into China. They're bringing US dollars into China, which China needs for hard currency reserves. They're creating jobs. Foreign directed companies, foreign invested companies account for about 30% of China's exports. You know, these Nike shoes that you say were made in China, yeah, they're made in China by an American company called Nike, right? That is employing hundreds of Chinese people, right? And when you have these tariffs that don't allow exports from China to the United States, this means this American company called Nike, everyone here still wants to wear Nikes. They're going to have to go somewhere else and make them. They'll have to go make them in Vietnam or something, or Mexico now. We see companies shifting to Mexico. Mexico is now our largest trading partner. The United States' largest trading partner now is Mexico, as it should be. I support that. Okay, so when we scare away people with the counterintelligence law or the foreign relations law, then we reduce the FDI. The FDI reduces, the fewer JV companies, fewer foreign invested companies, less manufacturing, less exports, less technology transfer. This is the economic impact on China.
Biden described it, China's economy as a ticking bomb. Why do you think he said that?
Okay, everyone talks about the real estate bubble. There's this huge debt of real estate in China. We know this. And everybody knows about the ghost cities. And everybody knows that I had a friend from Hong Kong that wanted to buy an apartment in China. They took him to the top of an apartment tower in Shanghai. The whole tower is empty. And they want him to, in Shanghai. And they wanted him to buy an apartment. He looked out the window of this apartment, and you know what he could see? 5 more empty towers. And in Shanghai itself. And next to the empty tower, you know what he saw? 3 construction sites where they're building 3 more towers that are empty.
But Shanghai is one of the most prosperous cities.
That's correct. And then he asked, how much is this apartment? And they wanted something like $250,000 US, like something insane like this. And my friend is like, so this is an empty apartment that nobody wanted to buy next to the other empty apartment, and you're demanding $250,000. So he said no, and he didn't buy it. Okay, so people know these stories, but the piece everyone is missing is that in a capitalist economy, if that were the United States, if you have towers and towers of unoccupied, unsold apartments or office buildings, what will happen is the price will adjust. The price will keep dropping until people buy them. We call this clearing the market. And it's the same way if you were an entrepreneur and you were going to sell shoes and you open your shoe shop and you charge $100 for shoes and nobody bought them, the next day you would try $90, $80 until you reach some balance where you're happy with the price and you're selling a large enough volume. And if you don't reach a point where, wow, I can't sell for less than $60, but the people want me to sell for $50, you close and you go out of business. And that's how capitalism works. In China, there are price controls because we have central planning. The government does not want the price of real estate to plummet because, one, families have 2/3 of their total wealth is invested in property. If that property were to lose value, they would feel like their savings were wiped out. Their life savings is wiped out. They would blame the government. So we have to keep the price of apartments artificially high. That's number one. Number two, all of these apartments are built on credit. Right, so the basic model is that the construction company gets people to prepay the apartment that hasn't been built yet. They use this money to start these apartments, but they don't finish the apartments. They use this money to start the next one, and start the next one, and the next one, and they're constantly rolling over debt. They're getting bank debt to finish this apartment so these people can move in before they sue you or before they protest too much, and then you do the next one and the next one. So we have this massive building debt in real estate. When you take a loan at the bank, they don't just give you $1 billion or $100 million or millions. They don't give it to you. You have to have collateral. What's the collateral? Oh, the building is the collateral. How do we value the building? Oh, at the market price of the building. Who set the market price of the building? Right. So if tomorrow they remove the price cap on the building, or the price, it's called a price floor, means the lowest price you can sell the building. If they remove that price floor, what would happen in China tomorrow? The price of these buildings would drop by probably as much as 20 or 30%. Now, the good thing for the average Chinese person, Lao Baixing. But what happened to the normal person is they would suddenly be able to afford an apartment. They'd probably be really happy about that. That's the good thing. The bad thing is the generational wealth that's tied up in these buildings would now be lost because the value is down. Okay, just like in America, you have your 401k plan, and then the stock market plummets and your 401k, it's the same feeling, same exact feeling. And number two is right now, the banks, which of course all the major banks are state owned, they have these huge lending portfolios on real estate lending. Right now, they say we have a very small percentage of non-performing loans because all these other loans are secured by real estate. But if we allow the price of the real estate to drop, suddenly they can no longer secure the loans, and the loans would all become non-performing loans that the bank has to write off. And this could be back of the envelope, just general for people at home that are not economists. I would say like this: if the price of all the real estate in China dropped by 20 to 30%, I guess that means 20 to 30% of the total real estate would have to be written off as bad loans. Okay. It's probably not exactly right, but that would be the logic that how we could think of it. 20 to 30% of the real estate. This is trillions of dollars in real estate loans that maybe we would lose 20 to 30%.
So that's what the ticking bomb is about.
That's the ticking time bomb, is at what point is this real estate going to collapse? The other issue, what I've been writing about a lot now, is the Chinese economy is in downward spiral, downward turn. So everyone asks, okay, but when China started their rise, 1978, 79, 80, when they started the rise, they were so poor and they were able to grow the economy so well. Why can't Xi Jinping just do that now? Economy's in a downturn, just do what you did in 1980. Problem is, in 1980, the way that they grew the economy was they expanded FDI. In 1980, foreigners wanted to invest in China but weren't allowed to. So then they took away the government control that allowed investment. Today, you're allowed to invest in China all you want, but nobody wants to. Right? So that's one. Number two, the low labor cost. You had dirt cheap labor in China at that time. Maybe it was $10 a month or something. I don't know what it was. Right? Now, labor costs in China, although the average Chinese citizen is poor, and I feel very sorry for the people that are not middle class in China, because I mean their salaries are so low. However, it's still triple what it is in Vietnam. And all these stories, all these crazy sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of like stories, myths that people just repeat about themselves, like the Chinese. They're like, oh, we're the hardest working people. We never take a break. We never take a sick day. That's why the foreigners want us to work in their factories day and night. What do you think happens in Vietnam? The baby is born in the factory. They don't care. They just keep working. I mean, there's other hardworking people, but particularly Vietnam, people are very hardworking. And then the other issue with China is that we have this aging crisis, which is accelerating. So the average age in China is about the same as the US. It's not terribly different. However, the births in China have dropped to lower levels than Japan. It's like 1.3 babies per mother now. It's not enough. You can't keep mom and dad will die and there's only 1.3 babies to replace them, right? So the population is shrinking. Old people are living longer. So when we see the population shrink a little bit, remember that what's actually happening is it's shrinking at the bottom. And what's the bottom? Your workforce. So the labor force is shrinking. Now, Japan has a population that's only 1/10 of China's, roughly. But the GDP is about a quarter of China's. That means each Japanese person is contributing more to the GDP than China. Why? Because there's still massive 100 million Chinese people making Nikes, and there's people in Japan making robots. A smaller number, but they're making robots that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, as opposed to the guy in China making a pair of shoes, and the factory earns $1 or 50 cents or whatever they earn, right?
Even though there are people saying that Japanese population is aging,
yes,
they're still not as serious as
right, right, because we have what we call old poor and old rich. So Europe also is aging, but Europe is old rich. When it began to age, they were already middle class. Japan's the same way. Singapore. Think about Singapore, one of the richest places in the world. Lower birth rates, I believe, than China. Very much same aging situation, but it's not a crisis. Because why? People in Singapore work in banks, international finance, IT. Number one, you can do that work when you're 80, right? And Asian people, very often live much longer, particularly Japanese in particular. But I'm sure in Singapore, people have a very long life. You can work later. it's brain work, and that work generates more GDP, more contribution to the country's wealth than someone working in a factory. So China is what we call old poor. So they're becoming old, but they're poor, which means the labor force is shrinking, and they just need tons and tons of people working in order to contribute to GDP. So the only thing they can do now is they need to move up the value chain and produce higher valued products. But they have been unable to do that so far. Most of their technological advancement, or a lot of it, has come from stealing IP from the FDI companies. Oh, wait a minute, now there's no FDI companies. They need advanced silicon chips. Oh, there's a ban on silicon chips. Look at Taiwan. Look at your home country. Your country has had an aging, I won't call it a crisis, but an aging situation, right? 20 years. 20 years. For over the past, when I lived in Taiwan, it was 2001, I believe. They were already closing bushy bonds. They were already closing, universities because the young population is decreasing. And yet the average income in Taiwan is double what it is in China, right? Because they're doing higher level work. And you need fewer bodies.